Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today's Bryan and myself. We have some updates we're going to go through and a couple really cool topics around some of our training and nutrition deadlines we have coming up and things we will look forward to coming down the pipeline after that. But before we get into these things, Bryan, what's the latest?
Man, a few things going on. Since we started this podcast, I have been using headphones that only have sound in one ear. and and I just decided to spend the $7 on Amazon to buy this new headset that has sound in both ears because it's brand new. Unfortunately, you'll keep seeing me mess with this thing because I cannot get the right ear to stay in. It keeps falling out. But I think it's okay because at least I can hear out of both ears, and that's good news.
That is very. What took you so long just to buy the secondary pair?
I was actually just laughing to myself about this right before the episode because I knew that this was going to be like a question. So it's odd. I don't really understand my buying habits. Like I'll spend $10,000 or more on building out my home gym and buy whatever, the pendulum squat, which was so unnecessary. But when it comes to like things like this, I always am very hesitant to buy. I don't know why. Like clothes are another thing. Like I just am kind of like, I don't care what I wear and I dress athletically all the time. So like I haven't bought clothes in years. And then just the other day I placed an order on Amazon for like new pants and shorts and socks and whatever because they all had holes in them. Someone actually commented on my video doing leg curls the other day and was like, dude, you got holes in your socks. and I was like another thing. Like I can't spend like $4 on a pair of socks, but I spend like 1,800 on a pendulum squat. So I don't really know, man.
That my spending habits have shifted a lot as well. The whole live your life out of a suitcase thing, like I've been doing for 2.5 years, has really fostered some unique purchasing habits. What I have found now more than ever is when I do buy something, I buy like a really quality pair. And I don't want to say like I don't care what it costs, but I'm buying one pair of pants. I'm going to buy like the $120 pair that I know is going to last me like 2 years, that the stitching's not going to fall out or whatever, as opposed to like buying something and then, God knows where we'll be in 6 months. And one of the things with like traveling is I can't find clothing sizes, right? Like when we were in Asia, I couldn't find shoes to fit me. So it's like I need to make sure my shoes last because I'm not going to be able to find a pair when I'm there type of deal. So I have kind of really started to solidify that. And then I just like having like much fewer things. I have like, 2 pairs of pants, but they're both like super comfortable, really quality. I don't have to worry about the stitching, busting or anything like that, which has been definitely a change in how I used to be when I, did have a apartment and could buy whatever type of deal.
Yeah, totally. Well, I appreciate like the minimalist on many aspects of life, like not spending money on the extravagant things or not increasing the cost of the things that you buy as you begin to make more money, because then you can save more, right? So I don't know, like I guess to me there's certain things that are important, and if they're important to me then I'm going to spend money on them. And if they're not important to me, like clothes, like I'll wear the same clothes that I've been wearing for 15 years. I actually have a dress shirt that Kim was laughing because we had a date night the other night and she found a picture of me on like the first weekend that we met in 2007 where I'm wearing the exact same shirt that I wore on our date night last night or like last week.
Yeah, it's what I kind of briefly brought up when he said it's value. It's what you value, right? If you don't value like that pair of jeans you don't need, you're not going to buy it, but you value that pendulum squat because of the time you spend with it, what you get out of it, so you spend the money on it. It all comes down to values. And I love, once I finally understood that, like it's like my perspective on so many things had shifted, and it's very empowering, I would say.
I agree. I like that. What's going on with you?
So I'm actually coming off, I think I was like, I don't know if I was like maybe a little sick this weekend, but just like super low energy. And I could feel it at the end of last week. Like I was feeling beat up. And it was interesting for me because someone who's so incredibly regimented with everything, sometimes when people are like, oh, I'm feeling like under a covered, well, I'm like, okay, let's look at your food logs, right? And food's obviously all over the place, sleep's all over the place. But for me, it's like my life is like Groundhog Day, to be completely honest. And I like it. But then when things like this happen, I'm like, well, my food's the same, right? Training intensity is the same, volume's basically the same, sleep's the same, water's the same. Like, what is kind of different? And And I think I might have just like caught a little sickness, and I have a very good immune system, so I just noticed I was like very low energy throughout like the weekend, and then like we didn't go hiking on Sunday, and I was almost like kind of relieved. I was like, dude, I feel like I would have been trying to like max it, you know. And then come Sunday evening, me and Jenny were going through something, and it was like 8 o'clock, and like my body's just like yelling at me, and I was like, dude, I think I'm gonna fucking go to bed. And I did. Like the sun wasn't even down, and I just like
That's
went
awesome.
upstairs, showered, and fucking went to sleep.
And when did you wake up?
At 7, so I slept for
11 hours?
Yeah, I slept for almost 11 hours. Yeah, and I got up like maybe twice to pee. And the mornings are harder for me to sleep in. Like I probably could have got up at like 5, you know, and been ready, but I was like, no, like it's still dark out. I'm gonna try and max this. And then I felt pretty solid yesterday. But I think like I don't know, I felt a little just under the weather. And what was interesting is the first sign was I felt undercovered, like my joints were a little achy, and I was like, man, my knees are both kind of sore. I have like one elbow, like I'll get like some elbow tendonitis back here on my right elbow that's been there since like high school, literally. So it'll like, I can tell when I'm like finally really at like maintenance calories or surplus, because it'll disappear completely, and then at some point throughout like my diet it'll start to return, just like, you know, certain tricep exercises I have to like move really slowly with, or I won't do ones where I'm like crazy overloaded in the lengthened with like a lot of weight type of deal, so that I can generally gauge where I'm at based on when that kind of discomfort will come back in. But that was kind of interesting, and now I'm feeling a lot better today. I trained yesterday, I feel pretty recovered from that. And that was just an interesting perspective I picked up on this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's always a learning experience.
I
feel...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go for it.
I was going to say the other thing I have to share is I have been making this drink. It is, I'll use Topo Chico because that's like the most available carbonated water here, mineral water. The unflavored one with the LMNT Electrolyte packs, it is incredible. It kind of tastes like candy almost, but it's 0 calorie. You get a ton of sodium and electrolytes and stuff like that. It's kind of like crack, man. It really is. It's very good.
It's good diet food, maybe not as necessary as you're ramping calories up.
I don't know. I think it's better than a lot of things.
Just better.
Yeah, I really like it.
Well, one thing I was gonna say on the elbow stuff is I used to have elbow things as well, like through CrossFit and then post CrossFit with bodybuilding, and as soon as I stopped like completely doing free weight tricep exercises, it went away. Like I basically just use cables and like close grip pressing variations now, and I don't have any issues, to the point that it's felt so good recently that I just reintroduced a lying tricep extension, but with dumbbells, so I can kind of control the angle of my hands a little bit. And I've done 2 weeks of that, and that's felt great too. So all good stuff. And I think that I feel like that experience echoes others as well that I've talked to, in that like as you get a higher training age, you just have to kind of move a little more toward cables for some of those like joint intensive exercises.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I, to be completely honest, kind of prefer it for a lot of those things, because you get a smoother, you know, resistance curve. And I feel like you can just execute a little bit better because you're not moving it through the free space, you know, with the elbow, because you can change like the position of your shoulder and those sorts of things. And the cable, I agree basically with everything you said.
Cool. So one of the things we were actually, before we get into the things we were going to talk about today, I do have a quick update on things in life. It's been a week. We got notice this weekend that some girl in Bryson's school tested positive for COVID, and it turns out she was in his class. So we didn't know about this until like literally Sunday night, I think. And then so we found out as a result of that they were closing his school for like 9 days. They're opening again next Tuesday, so like a week from today. And our nanny is freaked out because her mom has a heart condition, so she won't come because she is worried that Bryson was exposed to COVID. So we have no nanny and no daycare, and Kim is on like a 3-day bender of like big press things that she's handling like all day long. So I literally have just been on dad duty like 7 hours a day for yesterday and today, and we're just sneaking in this podcast because my mom, by the grace of her heart, decided to come over and take care of the kids for an hour so that we could podcast. And that's literally it. Like, I'm going to go right from this podcast back to parenting. And then on top of that, our air conditioner broke, and it's really hot in Boulder right now. It's in the mid 90s. So you were talking about being tired and like kind of under the weather. Last night was like the worst night of sleep I've had in forever. I think I woke up 10 times in the middle of the night. Like every 30 minutes I was up like, oh, I'm hot. This is awful. Like I'm sweating. Everything's sticking to me. Like one of those things.
Is the basement so just cooler?
The basement is cooler. We actually, that's a fantastic idea. We could just go sleep in the basement.
That's what I would do for sure.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So right now we have my mom's boyfriend over trying to fix it, but we'll see how that goes. And then so that's my week right now, and it doesn't look like it's getting any easier, unfortunately. So so we just got back from my birthday trip to Breckinridge, which was super cool. It had a couple of impacts on my diet and like my whole life situation. So going into the trip, I had hit a low of 185.6 on the scale, which is super cool because it meant I was like 3.5 pounds away from getting to kind of my goal weight or whatever. And did really well the first day, only ate 2,600 calories. The next day went for a massive hike. It was like a 4-hour hike to the top of a mountain and back down. And I ate 3,100 calories that day, but it kind of evens out because of 22,000 steps or something like that. And then I had a couple days after that where they weren't perfect and I didn't like over exercise or anything. It was like, around 3,000 calories. Like I had a cookie one day and my mom baked a cake when I got home, so I had a small piece of cake. But then I woke up on the scale on Monday morning, first time weighing myself since before the trip, and it was like 188. And I was a little down. I was like, I thought that it wasn't going to be this impactful. Like I did pretty well. I exercised, blah, blah, blah. And then today, one day of 2,300 calories, and I hit basically my low again. It was 185.8, so it was 0.2 above where I was before the trip. So it's like one really, really good day undid like 4 moderate days. So that was pretty cool, and it's encouraging in the pursuit of this cut in the long run, especially because I just put a deadline on my cut. So I started it on April 26th, and I'm putting a deadline September 26th, which is going to make it a 5-month cut. I did have a 2-week diet break in there, so it really was 4.5 months of actual deficit time. And the goal is to get to 182 by 9/26. And then on 9/29, I'm getting snipped, so that should be really fun. But at least I'll be sure not to have any more babies, and that is a positive. And then I'm going to take a few days off because you got to recover from that. And I'm going to go into a caloric surplus, slowly kind of ramping back up. And I'm going to do a strength cycle. And I'm kind of composing my ideas around how I want to construct that and all that stuff. But I'm really excited to have like kind of an end in sight, and it's actually nice having a deadline. Like it was really cool not having it for most of the diet, but it's nice at this point having one to kind of just push me a little bit and help steer me away from the once a week kind of indulgences that I've been having throughout this thing. So all good things.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the deadline, like what specifically around the minor procedure is making you have that deadline. But then you kind of said like it's nice to have a date so that I stop letting my psychological, variances like take over and be like, oh, well, I can be a little bit more flexible, this weekend because I don't have a deadline. And that like never the non-existent deadline. It can be good, right? I think, especially because a lot of times people set their deadlines way too short. But after a point, it just becomes like, oh, well, I'm still dieting and I'm still dieting
Right.
and I'm not there yet, but I'm
Right.
still dieting. But like every weekend, you're kind of like fucking it off a little bit. And then you end up like just going up and down, or what I should really want to say is like in circles, kind of at the same point, because you're not committed at that level to get that like last bit that you want to. And I think that's pretty much exactly what you said.
Yeah, so it was. I kind of realized that I needed that little bit of push with the deadline because I was looking at my data, and the first like 11 or 12 weeks, I was consistently averaging a pound a week over the grand scheme, and then in the last 6 weeks, it's cut down to like 2/3 of a pound or maybe even half a pound some weeks, and it's just yeah, like I know that it gets harder as you get leaner,
Margins get
but I've
smaller.
also yeah, for sure, but it's it also is. I think it was more a result of the freedom I was giving myself with once or twice a week eating, and then spending the rest of the week essentially in a deficit, making up for the excess meal that I had. And I mean, I knew that I was going to do that, so it wasn't like I was playing this game of like, oh no, I fucked up. Now I need to clean it up. It was like, I knew once or twice a week I was going to do this, and I knew that I was going to have these lower deficit days. So in many ways, it was like the Bill Campbell study or whatever, where they had 5 low days and 2 higher days. It just slows the process down a lot, because if you don't get it perfect on the 5 lower days, then you kind of just waste a week, and you realize a week later that you're like, shit, I didn't go as low as I needed to on those 5 days to make up for the 2 higher days that I had. And then you're basically a week behind where you plan to be. And that just sucks. So I just want to dial it in, get it right, know that there's a deadline, commit to the process, and then reach the goal, and then be able to have the more flexibility and freedom from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love having that hard line at the end. And that's exactly what I did. Once I hit like mid-June on my diet, I was like August 1st is the day, right? Because I didn't want it to turn into that where I was like, well, what is the point, or how lean do I really want to get? I knew I wasn't getting on stage or anything like that, so I was like August 1st, right? And for better or for worse type of deal there. And then you move into basically my favorite part of nutrition periodization, which is that like reverse. But it's well, yeah. I mean, there's 2 reverses, right? There's like the you've treated your body like a dumpster fire for a while. Now we need to reverse you to get you to like an appropriate maintenance level calories, so that we can get some processes performing how they should be kind of back. But then there's the also reverse diet. It was like, I'm purposefully at the bottom end of a diet and I've been adherent, and now we're going to reverse out of that. And that, the second part, is my favorite, because you just get all these cool adaptations. Like energy improves once you fill out with glycogen fully, like you look even better, training improves, your sleep improves, stress goes down. It's like all these cool things happen to like form this pyramid where you like feel incredible and then you look incredible at the same time. And you're like, I just want this to last forever type of deal. So that is really, really cool.
Yeah, if I can keep it to like 1/3 of a pound a week, like 1.3 pounds a month, which is kind of what I was looking to achieve the last time that I reversed out, that would be perfect. Because I mean, dude, honestly, like it's really hard for me initially to stick to that. I usually settle into that amount maybe like a month or 2 weeks after. But those first like 2 weeks, I'm just kind of like, fuck it, I'm done dieting. Like I'm gonna eat the things, I'm gonna have the fun. And
it's like the worst approach to take.
I was like, I would have pizza and cheesesteaks, all the things that I've been thinking about during this diet. Like I saw a commercial the other day for like a Jersey Mike's cheesesteak, and it was like dripping with provolone cheese, and I was just like, this is what I need as soon as I'm done dieting. So I'm gonna give myself a week or whatever to go eat the food, and then I'm gonna settle into my 1/3 a pound a week or whatever it is from there.
Yeah, I am now. Well, my final week of dieting, we did increase my calories. So it wasn't like, I mean, technically my like final week was the last week of July, but I think my lowest from the diet was like 190.2 was what I hit. And then today I was 192.2. So 2 pounds.
You're barely gaining weight.
Yeah, I'm not really gaining weight. And I just this week started like consistently being into the 192s after that like kind of fluctuation period this weekend.
Right.
But I was in the 191s literally for like all month. So and calories have come up at least, I can't remember off the top of my head, probably like 600 from the bottom. So I think I'm not sure if it'll be this week. I do my check-ins on Thursdays, or next week I'll crack 3,000 calories again on training days. And I'm still holding
Nice.
like a very low body weight, super lean still. So this has been by far my most successful one. But at the same time, I feel like psychologically in the past year, maybe a little bit longer than that, I've been able to separate from the desire of like those cheap foods, junk foods type of deal.
Oh yeah,
Like,
you're not into that at all. I know. I'm very, very different than you in that manner.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I
You
used,
prefer you because you don't feel good when you eat them.
yeah, like if I were to go have like a cheesesteak or whatever, oh my God, it'd be fucking diarrhea planet. And then I'd feel awful.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to, not, because I lost that battle for years and years and years, where I would have those food and I knew the consequences and I would eat it anyway. And then there was like one time where I just was like, Aaron, we can't fucking do this anymore. And I've faltered a little bit, but it's been, like in the last like year and a half, I've been able to like, I just don't really desire it at all. Like sometimes I'll like desire some like candy or something like that. And then when I do have higher fats, I'll fill that with like dark chocolate. I really do enjoy dark chocolate, and maybe like a couple gummy bears, but that's really about it.
Yeah, that's really tame. That's really tame.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like me on a diet. Like, oh, I'll just have like a couple gummy bears or like some dark chocolate. That's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I very much have accepted that I have a desire to eat food. All foods, whether it's sweet food or savory food, I like all of it. And I work out and gain muscle so that I am more insulin sensitive and I can eat these foods and they don't impact me as negatively and don't affect my health as much. And I honestly don't really feel too shitty when I just have like one thing. Like if I just have like a cheesesteak, then I'm fine. But if I'm like cheesesteak, fries, and then a brownie or something, then I'm screwed. I'm like the worst person the next day or two, So it's just I've realized that now that I can have like one item, but I can't have like multiple bad items at the same time.
And I think that's a good approach.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I'm really excited about moving into the strength cycle. So I actually haven't done a strength cycle, and it was kind of inspired by our chat with Helms, because I literally haven't done a strength cycle since like I did a 5x5 Ripto thing in 2016 when Varnum started his gym. I jumped on the bandwagon and did like a 6-month like Ripto thing, and that was rad. Like I got super fucking strong. Like I PR'd my back squat at 405 times 3. So that was like something that is always kind of in my head, is I don't know if I'll ever achieve that again. But I'm gonna do it. So I'm a little unsure what I want to do for my pressing for my strength work, because I know that my shoulders don't do well with overhead press anymore, and I just have never liked barbell bench. So there's like a part of me that is willing to give barbell bench like one more shot and just see if now that I have like this renewed focus on technique and execution that maybe I can do it. But it's going to be really hard. I guess the other option is I could run a strength phase for like the deadlift and the squat. But maybe do like a little higher rep stuff on the upper body. Like I could stick with dumbbells for bench and dumbbells for rows or machine rows, and stick with like 6 to 10 reps instead of 1 to 5 or whatever it is. So that's another thing that I've been considering. Any thoughts?
Yeah, what I was going to ask about the barbell bench, is it both like incline and flat bench that you don't feel great with?
I feel better with incline. The issue really is that what feels normal to me in when I'm racking the bar and then going down and up, what feels even does not look even on camera. Or like when someone's behind me spotting me, they're like, "Bro, your bar is like super tilted. Like, what are you doing?"
I remember that.
And to me,
you brought it up.
yeah. So this is like it's really obvious, So I am hesitant to want to progressive overload and lift heavy weights when there's something weird going on that I'm not feeling. And I just don't know that it's worth the risk at this point in my life. Like I don't really care if I ever bench 300 again. So like I probably will end up just sticking with dumbbells and like machine row type stuff. I'll probably do like a heavy like Penlay bent over row. But I'll also have like some hypertrophy work in there for the rest of the upper body. But either way, I'm definitely going to low bar squat and I'm going to conventional deadlift. And I haven't done either of those in 5 years or more at this point. So I'm just excited to kind of get those neural adaptations and do a different type of training in a surplus and just kind of see what adaptations can occur.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that as well. That we kind of talked about. It's been a long time since I've done it as well. I did do, let me think, not 2020, so 2018 and 2019, I believe. Both years I did Squattober, which is like a short 4-week like strength block. It's very low volume type of thing. And those were always pretty cool because I would go from like not back squatting to squatting within like 90, I can't do the math off the top of my head. My best all-time back squat high bar is 425. And the first year I did Squattober, I hit 405. The second year I hit 400, so that's what probably within like 95, 97%. That's awesome. Yeah. Going from like not squatting to within 4 weeks right there. Yeah. So that is pretty cool. I think what I will do with mine is I will overhead press. I do like strict overhead press. I've always had a goal of 225 overhead press. I've gotten within 10 pounds of that. 215 is the most I've ever done. And then I will conventional deadlift as well. I'd like to pull over 500 again, which I think, honestly, I've never really trained consistently for like a deadlift in many, many years. I think that will not be very difficult to do, to be completely honest. I think I can probably do that with a couple weeks of training and like a volume taper type thing. But I think that'll be exciting. It'll be lower volume, right? Probably only training maybe 4 days per week type of deal. Really focused on recovery and just seeing, like, it's been a long time since I've really tried any real strength stuff. I want to see like what type of changes all this information I have on the nutrition recovery side I can apply to that and really see if I can hit some PRs or, do it safely and not come out injured is actually the top goal, which is something I always struggled with. I'd always get hurt in any strength blocks.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I feel like I'm going to have to detach my ego from during this strength phase, because like I have deadlifted over 500 a handful of times, like probably 5 times in my life. And every time that I've done it, I've watched the video back and been like, ooh, like my back kind of turns into a little bit of a question mark, but I've always had those really strong erectors where it just kind of handles it. But like the most recent one, so I deadlifted 517 or 518 at Cena's when we were doing the 1-ton challenge. And there's a video of that, and I had all the adrenaline in the world because Cena was sitting there yelling at me to pick the damn weight up. And it was like, I go down, and as soon as I separate the bar from the ground, my back kind of like hunches over like this, and I'm just fighting because Cena's yelling at me, and like, it's just the ugliest thing ever. Like, it's just disgusting. So I feel like I'm not going to let myself do that this time around. And I think that I'm going to have to temper some of my expectations with load because of that, especially on the deadlift. Because I actually think the 405 triple I did on the low bar back squat wasn't perfect, but I mean, it was pretty good. Like, I didn't completely lose positioning or anything. The deadlift, though, is not something I want to replicate, so we'll have to see what I can do within the constraints of like keeping good form.
How long do you think you're going to give yourself for this cycle?
I was thinking like 5 to 8 weeks.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Like, what do you think is realistic within the timing that you give yourself?
That's a good question, yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to start slow. So I'll probably have like a deload / intro week. And then probably week 1, So one thing I want to do with this phase is use the data-driven strength guys approach. So last time I did a strength phase, it was, Ripto style. So it was 5x5, and you basically just add 5 pounds every week and make it happen. But in the data-driven strength guys, which we're having on the podcast on September 21st, which is going to be super cool, but they've been doing all the research into being well shy of failure with strength work and making up for that delta with more sets. So their idea is like, you could do 7 sets of 3 with an 8 RM or something along those lines and get a ton of adaptations because you're getting a bunch of volume. It's still really heavy weight, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the approach that I want to take this time around in my strength phase. So I think that the effort level is never going to be super high until maybe I get to like the end for testing or whatever, if I decide to do that. So it's really the volume that I'm going to need to be concerned about. Like 7 sets of 3 on a deadlift with an 8 RM is a lot of volume if you haven't deadlifted recently. So what's probably going to happen is I'll start week 1 with like 4 or 5 sets and then add a set each week until I get to 7 or 8 sets and kind of see how my recovery is along the way and stuff like that. But I've never done a strength phase being that far shy of failure. So it's something I'm going to have to work on too. Like I'm really good at knowing what 2 to 3 reps shy of failure is, but I'm not really good, I don't think yet, at knowing what 6 reps shy of failure feels like. So yeah, that's just something I'm going to have to learn along the way.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really cool new kind of endeavor for you with that, because a lot of it's just kind of different. I wish I could remember where I saw it, but it was like a newer research published paper on strength, and it was like velocity was like a big determining factor of it, and then not getting into those like grindy reps in your like training sessions,
Yep.
like staying where you're moving weight like not, I don't want to say like very quickly, but at an appropriate velocity where you're not like grinding a rep, and that was from what the gist of the paper was, had like better like carry over towards actually those strength adaptations.
Yeah, so I believe part of the rationale is that in strength work, as you get to those grindy reps, there are mini compensations occurring where muscles that you're not intending on being part of the moving process are actually contributing to the effort. So you're creating these kind of like bad habit neural patterns that then just kind of grow upon themselves, and then you end up just not getting as strong because you're not actually training the exact movement pattern that you want to be training. So I completely relate to that too. Like we've all been there doing like a bench press, and you get like halfway up and then you're like, grr, and like there's like a little like tilt of the body, a little roll over or something. So yeah, those are the things you want to avoid. Like you want every rep to look literally identical and have the same execution velocity as the other reps. So I need to learn more about it. That's going to be one of the things I'm going to do over the week that I'm taking off after getting snipped, is I'm going to read up and listen to podcasts on how these guys are implementing this in blocks, etc., and kind of design something from there.
Cool. Yeah, I think when I thought about it, I think I want to give it at least like 3 months, like at least like a full 12 weeks.
I may too. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not like 6 to 8 or 5 to 8 was kind of like my idea of, if it's fitting into a hypertrophy model, then that would be what you do. Like you do that to potentiate hypertrophy. But man, I've been doing hypertrophy for so long. To be honest, there's like a part of me that's like having hypertrophy fatigue. Like I'm just kind of tired of training this way for right now. And I'm like really excited about trying something new for however long it is, 3 or 4, 2 to 4 months.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of like we briefly touched on this last week, how I'm running like one of the off the shelf mountain dog programs, and it's been nice to just kind of like detach from like, okay, I'm at this much, this like I'm on this rest period. Okay, I did this many reps last week for this. Like I'm just training really hard and just showing up and going through each day and just giving it my all. And that's been like a nice like just psychological break from that.
Is that program constantly varied?
Do you want to explain that a little bit better?
As in, like, does it have movements that you repeat for progressive overload?
Yeah, there are some that repeat, but a lot of it does vary. So that is like both good and bad, because then there is things where I'm like, fuck, I do not want to do this. I wish I could just do what we did last week, type of deal. But it is forcing me into like find different ways to do things better. For example, like there's 2 leg presses at the gym. One is like the traditional one on the rails. The other one is that like kind of pendulum like leg press that I generally would hate. But for instance, yesterday was like, hey, I want you to do like your feet high and wide. This is going to be like a hamstring type focused leg press. And I was like, it didn't really feel great. And then I was like, what happens if I grab one of these like mats and I put it on the seat? And then when I put it there, I was like, oh, this feels great. And then I like played around with it. And I was like, well, I could, like, my quads are getting hammered on this too. And I was like, okay, I just like unlocked something that I would have 100% skipped because I never would have taken the time to do it, because in the past I haven't liked it. But by just like putting this pad in here and changing like my hip angle a little bit with where the pendulum point is on the thing, it gave me like a completely different angle, and it was now something that I realized. So it is kind of nice in that regard. And plus there's some things that are just like god awful, and it's just like, this is what we got to do, just strap up and do it. But there's only one set, so like that's kind of like you just go all out on that one set, and then I know I can go home type of deal. So it just brings out like things that I wouldn't normally program myself type of deal.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I like that. I've always been curious about his programs, because it does seem when he puts out his YouTube videos, it seems like every time he's like leg day with Mountain Dog or whatever, it's like they're doing something completely different. Like the only thing that stays the same is that he always starts with leg curls of some sort, but it's like a lying leg curl or a seated leg curl or a single leg curl or like whatever. It's just that's the one staple. But then it's like, you might go to leg extension or to pendulum or to leg press or to safety bar squat, or like what order is just so. It just seems random.
There is a bit of a system. I don't feel comfortable enough like speaking onto it entirely, but there's generally like the one's like a warm up, kind of like a single joint type thing, and then there'll be something there's like usually one where you're training explosively, right? And that's generally like a hack squat or a pendulum, or maybe like a Smith machine squat or like a back squat, something like that where you're training explosively. And then there'll be something training it from a stretched position, where you're like, a lengthen overload where you're going to pause in the bottom or something like that. Or when you do finish a rep, you're going to sit in the stretch for like 15 seconds at the end type of deal. So there is like a bit of there's like a framework to it, I guess, is what I really want to say.
Okay. Yeah. I saw a video where he went over that. He did talk about how he likes to start with like a primer movement or like a single joint one that helps you build mind muscle connection. And then you go to like a compound movement, like like you were saying, like a hack squat or a bench press or something like that. And then he has a short position movement and like a lengthened position movement, like you said. I can't remember which one's first, if it's lengthened, then shortened, or shortened.
I think the lengthened is usually last, if I'm trying to remember from like yesterday.
Yeah, because once you do lengthened, you've created all the muscle damage and you're not going to perform super well after that. Very cool. Well, I will keep everybody updated as I get more into the weeds on my strength cycle stuff, and hopefully the last 33 days of my diet go really well and I hit my goal and everything's all good.
I think that'll happen. Yeah, I mean, with the deadline and you have your sights set, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't.
Yep. I agree. I actually appreciate the people, though, on my poll yesterday when I asked if I was going to succeed. There was 6% of people said that they didn't think I was going to succeed. And I actually appreciate that, because I think if you are keeping up with my story and you saw the recent trend of like the last 4 or 5 weeks of like I'm only losing half a pound to 2/3 of a pound a week, and I keep going up and then back down and up and back down, that I think there is reason for people to have doubt. And I appreciate it because it provides motivation as well.
And one last question before we move on quick. What are your like daily step count and stuff at right now?
Yeah, it's been really high, which is something that I didn't want to have happen toward the end of the diet. But it's because the reason it's been so high is because I had been more free with the food that I was eating. So I don't think that it really needs to be that high. To be honest, I actually think, and this is crazy, but I actually think that I'm having a little bit of constrained energy expenditure. Like I think that I'm walking and doing steps and that it's not doing anything. So I don't feel like at 15,000 steps that I'm or 16,000 that I'm actually burning more than I was at 11 or 12,000.
And then that's where you're at right now, like 15 to 16,000 on average.
Yeah, most days are 14 to 16.
That's pretty
now,
high.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, because I didn't think you were that high, and I was like, well, you can pull these aces out of the back pocket and bump steps. You can throw the weight vest on if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, the reason, though, like I said, is because of the nutrition. Like, at the end of the day, you have to walk 2,000 steps for 100 calories or 2,500 steps or whatever it is. So if I'm doing an extra 5,000 steps, that's really the equivalent of 200 calories. So if I'm eating 2,800 calories when I'm supposed to be eating 2,500 calories, then it really does make those steps negligible,
Yeah,
right?
you're just eating more to walk more, basically, or walking more to eat more.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing that I like about doing more steps at this point of the diet is that it's distracting. Like it's a period of time where I'm doing something that isn't eating or thinking about eating. And it's not that I'm thinking about eating all the time, but I do love food. Like I think about food even when I'm in a surplus. I'm still like, yes, I get to eat in 2 hours,
Not me.
So when I'm in a diet, I'm very much thinking about food as well. And I just always enjoy the process of putting food in my body no matter what.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have like a small topic for today. I just think it's more some commentary from us because we've been having a few conversations with people in our DMs about being natty, natural bodybuilding, essentially not taking drugs. And the conversation, at least as it pertains to me, was kind of taken a forefront because I posted about it on my story during my trip. And essentially, to lay the groundwork, what happened was I was at the resort gym where I was in Breckinridge, and there were these two kids in there training, and they're probably in their late teens or early 20s. They both had good physiques. They looked athletic, like maybe they play football or some lacrosse or something like that. And they were, relatively strong. They had good physiques. They were both probably around my height and around 200 pounds with the amount of body fat you'd expect for a high school kid playing football. Like they were definitely not a physique
20%.
athlete, right? Yeah, 20%, exactly. But like good, strong physiques for like a high school or an early college kid, right? So I said what up to them, and I walked out to the hot tub. I had my shirt on and everything at that point, and I did my hot tub, and then I walked back in, and I didn't have my shirt on. And as I walk by, I see in the mirror one of the guys is making like the steroid symbol injection into his body, and the other guy goes, "Oh yeah, bro, 100%." And I just like, it's one of those things that it kind of irks me. Like I always in the past took it as a compliment, and for whatever reason this time it like irked me because I only look good right now because I'm small. Like if they even took like a moment to think about the fact that I weigh 185 pounds and that I'm like the same height as them, and that like I look good in the moment because I'm lean and I'm shredding or whatever. But I bet if I was 200 pounds, even 15 pounds heavier than I am right now, that I would have walked by them and they wouldn't have even thought twice about it because I would have looked soft and just strong, kind of like they do. So it's interesting how being lean makes you appear way more jacked, and that it changes people's perceptions of your physique as well.
Yeah. It because it's what 99% of people are unable to do because of commitment, education, right? Understanding, learning. It's not that hard to like, don't get me wrong, right? We all love lifting, right? We all love lifting. We eat a lot of food because that's how you get jacked type of thing. And then you get there like, yeah, when I'm 200 pounds, I really don't look anything special, right? Just like a big guy, right? But then it's taking, so you've been dieting for, what do you say? I dieted for 4 months, right? And
yeah, I'm at 4 months right now.
That is, for me, no alcohol, right? No candy, like everything I said. Bryan likes to take a little bit more of a flexible approach. 99% of people aren't willing to do that, right? And that's where the difference in how you actually look like super cool or good or like you're on steroids comes in, that most people aren't just going to do. So like when Bryan and I are at 15% body fat, we look like everyone else at 15% body fat, right? The one maybe saving grace we do have is, let's face it, we're not that young anymore, right? You've been training well over 20 years. I'm approaching 18, I believe. And for the last 10 years, I make these micro adjustments and every year get a little bit better and better. I actually was just comparing photos, last week's check-in photos to a year ago. And I'm trying to think, okay, did I actually make any progress like in this year? Right. And I did. And it's like a little bit in the like lateral side of my shoulder, right? Because I got really good at doing lateral raises. A little bit of that outer quad sweep. But besides that, it pretty much looked the same. I'm a little bit leaner, right? And that's really what it comes down to is like to be a natural person, right? And you really, it's playing the long game. You know, it's at 22, at 24, like I didn't really look that good, you know, and it wasn't, I was that football player who was at 20% body fat for years and years and years. But that's just, it's not a quick sell. It's not an easy sell. It takes a lot of time and commitment, and that's where people will kind of make the judgment. And a lot of people have no idea what steroids actually look like. There is a look to people who are on gear. And like, to be completely honest, being fully transparent, I think it's fucking cool, right? I just haven't done it yet. And that's, I think, what it comes down to is people don't understand the look. They think if you have muscle and you're lean, like that means steroids. And it really couldn't be any further from the truth.
Yeah, no, totally. That's really well said. And I feel like specifically for those guys, because of where they were in their training journey, I really wish that I would have just like turned around and said something and been like, hey guys, like, how much do you think I weigh? And, you know, I would have told them I'm 185 and I'm like, how much do you guys weigh? And they would have been like, 200, 205. And I'm like, yeah, so you don't think after training for 20 years that you'd be able to be a lean 185 without taking any drugs, you know? Just like simply just state it to them like that. And there's no way that they could possibly like be like, no, bro, you're on steroids. Like it's just, I don't know. It's always in retrospect. You're always like, man, I wish I would have said this or blah, blah, blah. Like you always have the perfect answer in retrospect. But in this case, like I even thought about that in the moment. And then like in my head, I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to go into the steam shower and just not deal with this right now. And I wish that I would have, you know?
Yeah. You could have saved them like years of,
Exactly. I would be like, dude, just follow me on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, you'll learn so much.
They really would too. And that's like the funny part of it is they would really get their minds blown.
Yeah. And then we've also been, so another thing that's kind of unrelated to my experience with these two guys with the Natty conversation is how important muscle insertions are. And I think that there's a few good examples here of people I know. So there's one guy, Dave McConey, who was on our podcast, and he's taller than me and he weighs a little more than me, but it's very obvious when he is 190 pounds and I'm 185 pounds or whatever it is, given that I'm a little bit shorter. When you look at our physiques, we're similar body fat percentages and we have similar measurements. Like my legs and his legs are the same size. Our arms are the same size. Our chests are within like an inch of each other. So all of these measurements are more or less the same with him, but we look like next to each other or pictures compared to each other of he and I, because he's longer and leaner and has insertions at non-optimal places. He just doesn't have the same pop to his physique when he gets lean. And that seems to be something that is really common, you know, and it's not that he's not like he's strong too. We talked about it on the podcast that he was on with us when it was like episode 4 or something like that. But he and I have similar strength numbers too. Like we've each hit the 200, 300, 400, 500 for like the power lifts plus overhead press. So yeah, I think that's also a super interesting factor as well, because you and I are both pretty lucky with the way that our insertions are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the first person to say I have gotten lucky with just muscle shape and stuff and bone structure. For instance, I've crazy broad shoulders, which make me look like I'm way more jacked than I am. And then I have a super small waist. Like I have literally the waist the size of a woman. So it helps with like that V-taper thing to make my back look like it's much bigger than it really is. It really, really isn't. I mean, have gotten lucky with like just basically skeletal structure type stuff. And then kind of like a downside to that for me is like I have really skinny like joint areas. Like my wrists are pretty narrow considering like my...
Can you fit your fingers around your wrist?
Barely. And then like knees and Achilles, those sorts of things, like they're very, very small. So I think like for a lot of it does have to do with I mean, genetics gives you like your shape and type of stuff, and like Bryan was saying, like muscle insertions type of thing. However, what I don't want to do, and this is what I think too many people do, is they let that hold them back from really trying hard. And they think like, oh, well, I have X, so I can never achieve X. And like maybe that never means like, yeah, you maybe won't win an Olympia or anything like that, but that doesn't mean you can't look like pretty fucking fantastic with like consistency, diet, like intelligent training, and actually like putting a very high effort into it. A lot of people use it as like or take it as like a death sentence. Like, oh, I can't do that because I was born, X or whatever. I don't have that, as opposed to, and they let that hold them back from even trying. And that's something I've never really agreed with.
No, totally. And I do think that if you don't have like the best genetics to the point where you're going to win a bodybuilding competition and that's like something you want to do or whatever, that sucks. Like that's unfortunate for you. But I think that the key is finding a part of this strength game that you love and that you can pursue. Like Dave McConey used to train hypertrophy because he was on this mission to get as much muscle as he possibly could. And then he kind of realized that through experimenting on himself that he can train way less, put in more effort, stick with mostly compound movements that he enjoys, and take this more like strength focused perspective where he's really focusing on progressive overload because that's something that he can control. And he still looks good. Like he still looks the exact same. And yet he's enjoying his training because he goes into the gym and he feels like confident that he can add weight to the bar and he's doing movements that feel good for him and whatever. So it's easy, I think, for you and I to fall into this hypertrophy game and be like, training straight for hypertrophy is the best because it's produced really good results for us. But there are ways that you can really get a lot out of training without necessarily training strictly for hypertrophy. It can still be like a component of your training. And of course, like for us, we also chose hypertrophy because it's so sustainable. Like strength had injured us and caused us issues and joint pain along the way. So there are reasons to train hypertrophy just because you want it to, other than the fact that it's to make you look good. But if looking good isn't the end result for you or the thing that, like, if you're not able to achieve, then you can add in elements of strength training or Olympic lifting or strongman or other pursuits within this field that you find enjoyable.
I agree with that. And I know, like you said, both of us we landed here after going through all those well, you kind of started and then came back, but I mean, I started in powerlifting and then was, basically just like your average gym bro. And then I went into CrossFit and then that took me into Olympic weightlifting and then that took me back into powerlifting and like now I'm here. So I've like been through a lot of those things and I landed here because I was just really beat up, and this was something that I could do where I didn't feel like crap and being beat up all the time.
Yeah, dude, I agree. I mean, like I said earlier with the joints and the way the body feels, like I can't even believe that I just turned 39 and my body feels so good. I mean, all around so good. Like there are little things that pop here and there and like I'm not perfect, but on a day-to-day basis, I have zero pain. Like things that affect me on a daily life, like if I'm going out for a bike ride with Bryson or jogging around the park with him or climbing rocks and whatever, like all these things, I don't have like range of motion limitations that are holding me back or shoulder pain or elbow pain or knee pain or any of those things that I did have during the CrossFit and strength training days. And so if for no other reason than the fact that it keeps me feeling young and athletic, then this has been like a godsend of a way
definitely.
to train.
And in the coming years, there's gonna be a period of time where you're gonna have to still be able to establish your athletic dominance over him, and you're gonna have to hold on for that for dear life for as long as you can.
And I'm gonna get injured trying to do it too. I'm gonna like tear a hamstring and I'm gonna like pop my rotator cuff playing basketball and like I'm gonna be like, damn it, I should have just stuck to hypertrophy.
Anything else you have to add on that one, Bryan?
Nah, man, I think we're good.
Cool. So yeah, this was a pretty cool episode getting to talk about a gamut of different things, and really I like what we wrapped up on in talking about that because it is, again, both of us do get accused. I'm using air quotes here. Most times I take it as kind of a compliment, but I think a lot of it, especially at this day and age, comes back to people just are very, very uninformed which is unfortunate. So if Bryan and I can help inform people out there, I think we're doing our job then, which is helps me. I feel pretty decent about that, helping provide some good information. So if anyone has any questions about any of those things, reach out to Bryan and I on Instagram. With that, guys, we will talk to you next week.